Hi everybody, welcome to Fun with Olivia. If you are new here, this used to be Makeup Fun with Olivia because I also love makeup, and makeup is not off the table, but lately I have been very into crocheting and knitting and just all about the yarn life. So I changed my YouTube channel to Fun with Olivia because I want to have all kinds of fun with you all. So I hope you enjoy. And if you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. All right, so today I want to talk a little bit about using up your yarn. I've been into knitting and crocheting for a long time. And a few years back, when I was a stay-at-home mom, I acquired quite a bit of yarn, and not just during that time, but definitely especially during that time. But on and off, I start buying yarn, and I need to be doing something with my hands. So a few years back, about 4 years ago, I decided to be proactive about using up my yarn. And I had a lot of yarn that I loved, but I only had 1 or 2 balls or 1 skein of something. I had a lot of wool that I didn't want to felt, and so I felt like I couldn't use it. I had a lot of yarn, and I still do actually, of all of these categories. I had a lot of yarn from a lovely friend of mine that I just treasure that lives in Spain, and we've done multiple yarn swaps, and so I had and have a ton of yarn that she sends me, and it's beautiful. And so I just didn't know what to do with all this yarn, and so I decided a few years ago, I'm gonna really use it up. And so what I decided to try to look up is stash busting projects. Now, there are a lot out there. You can make accessories, you can make hats, you can make scarves. I love making blankets and afghans. I always have, and I thought, what if I just look for a pattern and start using it up? What I did do is I looked up patterns with different stitches on them because I like texture on my blankets. And so let me show you the first one. I have 3 to show you. And so I'm sharing this in hopes that maybe it'll inspire some of you to just use your yarn, just jump in, because I cannot tell you how happy it makes me to have these blankets now. And it has all kinds of different yarn that I love. And it makes me happy to use them, to see them, and to see them being used, because my daughter swapped one right up, the very first one that I'm about to show you. So here is the first one. The pattern is called Spice of Life Blanket. It is on Ravelry. It is a free download. The only thing that I followed was the stitch pattern. Other than that, here is the bottom, and let me try to show you a lot of it. As you can see, I used a lot of bright, I kind of went through my worsted weight yarn, and I took out the ones that make me happy, the pinks, the brights, all of that. And yeah, I took them out, and I'm I'm gonna use them together. I'm not sure how. So I printed out the Spice of Life blanket pattern, and this is what ended up happening. Now, every time I would make a couple of stripes, then I would decide what am I going to use next. So if I had just finished these red stitches here, I might go, you know what? I like this one. Or actually, I think I did this one, if I remember correctly. I did this one first, and then I thought, ooh, I think this would look really nice because it would pop. And so I kind of just went with it. And honestly, I was terrified as I was making this blanket because I'm like, oh my God, this is going to look like the ugliest blanket ever. But you know what? I loved it. I loved it. And in fact, when my daughter saw me have a good portion of this, I think she was 10 or 11-year-old, she's like, that was going to be mine. And it made me so happy that, she was loving the colors, and she's like, and she did keep it. So I ended up putting a purple border on it. I mean, it's not the perfect border, but I'm happy with it. And if you can kind of tell, it's kind of like all wrangled up because it gets used every single night. My daughter has this on her bed and she uses it, and it makes me happy that she uses it. In fact, I took it off her bed. She was actually using it on the sofa just a moment ago, and I took it away because I was going to do this video. So it makes me so happy that she likes her blanket. So this was the first one I made, and I made it in 2018. So the next one that I did, because I had used up like all my favorites from my worsted weight stash, and I used up a lot, let me tell you. I used up a lot. It's a long blanket. I mean, it's folded, so you can't see all of it. I should have measured it. Maybe I'll put it in the description box to let you know how much it came out to, because yeah, it's pretty long. It's a decent length. So the next one that I made was with my chunky yarn. I went through all of my chunky yarn, and some of it was a little bit bulky, some of it was chunky, and I made do. Like I said, I had a lot of wool yarn that my friend from Spain, I'm not going to say her name because I don't know if she wants me to put her name out there, but you know who you are. Gracias. So anyways, I used a lot of her chunky yarns that she sent me, because I decided I will wash it in the washing machine. I wasn't sure if it was going to work out. I will wash it in the washing machine, and then I'll hang it to dry over my my shower door. And so that's what I do now. So, and I love it. So again, it looks kind of wrangled, you guys. Wrangled meaning that it's used. And let me tell you, this is Linda's Lapghan by Linda D. I didn't tell you, Spice of Life blanket, the first one that I showed you, is by Sandra Paul. I'll put the links down below in the subscription, in the description box. So this one is Linda's Lapghan, and again, I liked the different stitches and textures, and I thought, let me try this one. I remember seeing this and just really liking that it had these like slanted front double crochets. I love that. And as you can see, I used all kinds of different chunky yarn, and I'm so happy with it. I'm totally happy with it. Let me see if I can not move it so much so you can see it, and see it has these like stitches crossing, and I love it. It's nice and subtle, and I'm having all these, one of you called these the yarn fuzz dust fairies, I think you called them, and I love that. Thank you for sharing that with me. So yeah, so I used chunky yarn, and this gets used a lot too. Here's something that I learned throughout this process, that wool is warm. I have some acrylic blankets, and yes, they keep me warm too, but wool is another level, isn't it? Because I noticed the difference on a really cold evening. I'll look for these, and actually my daughter said the same thing, because I took these away from her right now, and I gave her the acrylic, and she's like, oh, it was so toasty, and she had only had it on her for a few minutes. So yeah, so this is my second one. I used up chunky. Let me tell you, I think I emptied up like 2 plastic bins because I used up a lot of yarn, and it felt wonderful, and now we're using them, so I love that. The third one is not my favorite, only because I had a lot of worsted weight yarn that was not my favorite. And I'm sorry for the background noise. My son, on the weekends, he takes advantage and plays games with his cousin in Florida, or his friends, you know, because we're all like, we can't see each other, right? Sorry about that. So he plays, and you know, I support him. Okay, so anyways, the next one is my the leftover worsted weight, which weren't my favorite balls of yarn, but I wanted to use them anyway. So I looked for another pattern, and this one is called a Spicier Life blanket, also by Sandra Paul, another free pattern that you can download. I downloaded them on Ravelry, so that's the link that I'll probably put down below, but I'm sure you could find it on their blog or something, or, you know. Anyway, so I started up using a bunch of balls of yarn, leftover of yarn that I did like, but then leftover yarn, like some of the yarn that I really liked, like this one, I remember really liking it and using some of it on the other blanket, but then it ran out. So it's only here, and then, sorry, all the dust fairies. So yeah, I love that it has the different stitches. It makes it so fun to look at. But yeah, this was a lot of yarns that I thought I might like, and then when I started using them, like this was one. I love pinks, and this was like a pink and a brown, and I think it was called cherry. It was Red Heart chocolate chip cherry or chocolate cherry, something like that. And I just thought I was going to love it, but when I started making a project, I wasn't a big fan of it. So it just stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. And when I started this blanket, I'm like, it's going to get used. And I really like it in this blanket. It's like in the middle of like all these other colors too. So I feel like it really works. And then on all three of these blankets, as I was making it, I did not decide what border color. I was just going with it. And so at the very end, I had a hard time figuring out what border to put, because I felt like all these pinks and these taupes kind of made it a little bit vintagey in my perspective. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use this medium pink. My local library, a couple of years ago, I started a knitting group. And the very first event, kind of like an inauguration event, we had a big old yarn swap. And so some of the yarn that I got in that yarn swap of yarn that I had a lot that I'm like, I'm not going to use this. I just have so much. So I took it, but then I got some that I thought I would use, and I was making this blanket. And so this pink happened to be there, and I'm like, oh, that would look great on like, you know, the outside. And I had been taking it to the knitting group, and they're like, yes, take it. They even encouraged me, take it. It's going to look great on your blanket. And I do love it. I love it as a border on this one. So this is my third blanket. I want to make another one because I still have a ton of yarn. And so now when I want to buy a skein of yarn that I love at Michael's or somewhere, like sometimes I'll feel guilty because I'll feel like, oh my God, I have so much yarn, but this is so pretty, but I have so much yarn, but this is so pretty. And so now I'm like, this can go into my next, like, you know, beautiful, colorful blanket. So, yeah, so A, it's getting used up. And B, it just makes me so happy to see these colorful blankets. And so I can't wait to get the next one started. But I wanted to share this in hopes to inspire you, to give you ideas. Use up that yarn. Don't be scared, because I was so scared. This yarn was sitting in bins for a few years, and now it's being used. It's keeping us warm, and it makes me so happy, and it makes my daughter happy, and it just, you know, they're being used. They're being loved. So use up that yarn. Don't be scared. If it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out, but at least you have a blanket that's keeping you warm. With us, I feel like, you know, some people might look at them and go, oh my God, but I love them. I'm super happy with them. So anyway, let me know your thoughts. Have you ever tried a SCRAP-GHAN? If not, you know, maybe give it a try. All right. Thank you so much for visiting with me today. By the way, thank you for those of you that have been commenting and visiting my channel. I really appreciate you. And I'm enjoying watching some of your channels too. I'm like, oh my God, there are so many people out there, right? I have a lot of makeup YouTuber friends, lovely ladies, wonderful ladies. There is a community on YouTube that is just so beautiful, right? And there's a community for knitting and crochet too. I don't know many, but I'm like kind of watching the videos and really enjoying these wonderful projects that people work on. It's amazing. I get so inspired. So anyway, thank you if you're visiting from another YouTube channel, or if you're just, you know, looking something up on YouTube and you're into crochet and knitting. Thank you for taking the time to spend with me today and to chit chat a little bit about yarn, knitting, and crochet. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.